Hey, what's going on, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. So I'm just sitting here thinking about Devin Booker's MVP conversation, and I have to disqualify myself, I guess, to a certain degree by saying I'm not a Suns fan. I don't follow the Suns very closely, and kind of am just listening to other people speak on the conversation and going by what they're saying more so than what I actually understand. So that's my little disclaimer. But I just think, as far as Devin Booker is concerned, I think that he runs into something very, very unfortunate when talking about his MVP candidacy. Um, he runs into the standard set by guys who fill up the box score in multiple positions. I think that's what ultimately really, really damns him in this conversation. It's not that he ain't doing enough winning, because obviously Phoenix is the number one seed in the Western Conference and number one overall team in the league statistically at this point. Um, it's not that he's not efficient because he's shooting 50% from the field. It's not like he's not a great free throw shooter or a great closer or any of these different things that he can bring to the table. He's fantastic. I think what hurts him is that he's not ridiculously great defensively. He's not ridiculously great rebounding. He's not ridiculously great at passing. You see what I'm saying? Like, those are things that he would have to be able to fill up the box score night in and night out in order to be considered an MVP candidate that can seriously win it. He can be in the conversation, but in order for him to win it, I think he's going to have to do more. He's going to have to affect more of the basketball floor. And it's only because he's going up against guys who do. When you talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo, as we said, he does everything, both sides. You talk about Joel Embiid, same thing, 7 feet. I mean, you cannot do what he can do on the basketball floor, no matter how efficient you are, no matter how much you accomplish scoring the ball. It's just not going to equate to the way that they affect the basketball floor. You think about Nikola Jokic. I mean, his stats, you can't even duplicate those stats. There's certain things that he can do on a basketball floor because of his height and his natural multi-layered skill set, that it makes it impossible to kind of go up against him in an MVP candidacy if you're not able to do all of the things that these other guys can do. I think what would help DB is if they were to win the championship this year and he gets finals MVP, and then next season has a season like this going up against those guys. I think that would put him over the top. I think that would be the type of thing that would help him. Because I think, unfortunately, he's been stuck in Phoenix for a long time. They don't get a lot of national coverage. That's another thing that hurts DB. I think if he grew up in a Laker uniform, or if he grew up playing for, say, a team that you see all the time, you know what I mean, the Knicks or something like that, where they would get all this attention because of the fact of who they are. If he was a star for that team, you would see much more from him, and you would know, just on a national scale, exactly what it is that he can bring to the table from an MVP candidacy perspective. Because I always understood him to be a 30-point scorer. Even when he was 18, 19 years old, he came out as a super ridiculously great scoring rookie. You knew that from out the gate. He was just better than people. So it just became a situation where, okay, can he get into a good situation so he can show that he can do it when it's time to win? And he's only been given that opportunity up until last year. Like, at no other point has he ever been given the opportunity, despite putting up pretty much these same type of numbers. So DB's just stuck in a weird spot. He's in a Bradley Beal lane, to where he's a fantastic scorer who everybody would love to have on their team. A lot of bad teams, he would be their best player. But because of where he is and how the winning has gone, how he affects the floor, how the fact that they're not defensive players, all of those different things just make it so that it's very difficult for them to be considered an MVP. it's just no matter how well they play, you're just never going to get that consideration. You have to put up more defensive stats. He has to be able to do things like block shots and stuff like this. It's impossible. You know what I mean? The bar is too high set by past MVPs in certain cases. You're a guard, you Steph Curry, you better be able to shoot better than everybody. You know what I mean? If you're, say, Kobe Bryant, he scored 81 points in 1 year, 50 points every game dang near for like a month straight and didn't get MVP. Like, he only has one MVP trophy. You think about Shaquille only has one MVP trophy. It's very difficult to get him. You know what I mean? And then you consider the politics aspect of it. Sometimes MVP goes places you know it shouldn't go. Guys who are somewhat deserving, but they'll get it over guys who are definitely deserving. It just happens every year. So, you know, I understand Kyrie Irving was, he tweeted that he felt like Booker was MVP this year. I think he runs into the same problem. You know, I don't assume to understand or assume to jump into somebody's mind to understand why they come to a certain conclusion or what have you, but I can imagine Kyrie feels like DB should be considered for MVP because he and DB are similar players in the sense that they affect the floor in similar ways, but probably don't get the recognition because they don't affect the floor in as many ways as bigs or as many ways as long wings or whatever, guys who can do all kinds of stuff with their bodies. Because they're more so average height, average size NBA players, it's like, if you know, their skill set and what it is they bring to the table is appreciated by fans, but not as appreciated by the people who are voting for these rules, these basketball minds who kind of understand different things, you know what I mean, and more so than someone like myself. So it's just how I view it from afar. I feel like Kyrie is just kind of sending love to DB because he feel like he's probably judged by the same standard, and I think those players may not feel like that is fair. And the more I grow as a basketball fan and somebody who studies how the NBA goes, the more I get closer to the league, I guess you can say, the more I try to look at the other side of it, try to see the value more so in what it is that those guys bring to the table as pure scorers and efficient score players. I think that's I kind of look at it like the other guys do. I kind of go toward who's filling up the box score. Like, you know what I mean? I'm probably someone who's going to more so go after a player like Josh Giddey than maybe go after a Buddy Yield. You understand what I'm saying? Or I'm because Josh Giddey's going to be able to give me more assists, more rebounds, and I usually punt the scoring. Like, that's kind of how my mind works. I'm going to go after a Herb Jones because I know he's going to fill up the box score. I want the Vanderbilts because I know he's going to fill up the box score. You don't necessarily have to be efficient in my mind, but as long as you give me blocks, steals, rebounds, points, it's all of that, I just feel like that ultimately gives me more of a well-rounded piece on the basketball floor. Now, the flip side is if I don't have a Kyrie Irving, if I don't have a Devin Booker, not only can I not stretch the floor, but those guys that I'm picking up, they can't break people down. They're not getting a whole lot done unless they have a couple Kyrie Irvings down there to help make things happen. But the flip side of that is a guy like Kyrie Irving or a guy like Devin Booker, they're not going to be able to win the game without those guys, a bunch of them dudes that I just named, helping them do the dirty work that ultimately wins the game. So I think there's a balance to be had to understand that both are important, and how best to value them doesn't necessarily come from weighing them one against one another. And I think that's where I'm learning to grow as a basketball fan. So it's tricky, man. It's tricky. I don't envy people who have to vote. I think a lot of times we get caught up in being prisoners of the moment. I think voters fatigue is something that is unfair. The notion of voters fatigue to where you didn't vote for a guy who's deserving because he got it last year or got it many years. I don't think that should be the way we judge anything. But it is what it is. I think the MVP is probably going to be Joel Embiid because he's sustained his excellence longer than any of the other players that come to mind. Obviously, Giannis should be given as much respect as anyone because he's been healthy all year. But I just feel like, again, the unfairness of voters fatigue is going to play against Giannis. I don't think he'll get it because he got it last year. But I do think it's Joel's award. Actually, no, he didn't get it last year. Jokic got it last year. Giannis got it the year before. But either way, voters fatigue. I think it's going to come down to them just wanting to give it to somebody who hasn't had it before. And I think it'll probably be Joel. And I think that's cool. I don't have a problem with Joel getting it this year. I think there's about several other players, 5 or 6 other players who could be considered as well, including King James and KD. His very own teammate Chris Paul also should be given some consideration. Too bad he went down early with an injury. So yeah, that's what it is for me, man. I think the MVP this year is Embiid. But ultimately, Devin Booker is probably underappreciated, and the fact that he's getting some MVP consideration at the end of the season is a good thing, and I think it's a momentum builder for him. I think that's how he should take it. I think he should go into the playoffs, as motivated as he always is, but on a rampage as it pertains to setting himself up for a real MVP run over the next 2-3 years. Because I'm telling you, I think that's what's in the way. He just needs to win a championship. They need to see him in a different light. James Harden was able to get it, I think, not only because he was able to put up like legendary stats in different categories, because not only was James putting up 50 points, but he was also giving you like 17 assists in the same game. Like, DB ain't gonna do that. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. But I think also what worked in James Harden's favor is the fact that he had been in an NBA Finals with the Thunder early on, so you had already seen him win something. You'd already seen him get to that level. He didn't have the connotation as a player who can't help his team or lead his team to wins, big wins. You know what I mean? And I think Devin kind of ran into that, being on that bad Phoenix Suns team for so long. So yeah, that's what it is, man. That's just how I see it. That's just how I see it. I think he should set himself up for that. Win some more, do more winning in these playoffs. And, people will take him more seriously as they continue to understand what it is that he brings to the table. As Phoenix continues to get more nationally televised games. That's another thing that's very important. The politics get in the way. There's a lot of players out there who are very deserving, who are not going to get the consideration, who are in bad teams, who, if they were on good teams, would probably be considered for MVP too. I'm going to throw a name out there. He's not an MVP candidate by any stretch of the imagination, but I think if he were in a different situation, let's just say you replace him with Kyle Lowry. Nothing wrong with Kyle Lowry. I'm just saying you put him in Miami, let him be the star point guard of that team, and we're talking about him differently. A guy by the name of DeJounte Murray. The type of production that he puts up in multiple categories, and some of the stat lines that he put up this year, I just think if he were in a big market with a light shined on him and he thrived under that shining light, we'd be talking about him differently. And I think he's just an example. He ain't the only one, but he's just an example of that all over the NBA. So I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see more teams get nationally televised games. I'd like to see more conversations about different teams on these national daily shows where they just talk about the Lakers and that's it. I want to see more conversations about other teams. I think the talent would like to talk about other teams too. And I just hope that the execs kind of take the muzzle off of these guys and let them kind of expand their topics a bit, and this as it pertains to the association. But that's just my own personal preference as a fan. I just think that you get an overall better product when players don't have negative connotations about franchises before getting there that aren't based on the franchise's performance. And that happens sometimes, I think. I just think that happens sometimes. It's conditioning of the mind. So that's what I try to do. I try to offset that by talking about every team I possibly can. But at the end of the day, I unfortunately am a Laker fan. So I guess I'm part of the problem. But that's just what it is, man. Loyal to the core. And that's what's up. But for now, I just wanted to give some shout outs to everybody else. DB deserves some consideration. Fantastic player. And that's what I wanted to do, man. BDF 44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.